Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Tuesday, November 15th, 2022 meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. Moorhead Public Service Commission welcomes and encourages customer input on issues listed on the agenda or of general water and or electric utility interest, time and commission permitting. Speakers are limited to a 3-minute presentation. Customers wishing to address the commission regarding a specific agenda item will be afforded an opportunity during the discussion of that item. Customers wishing to speak on matters not listed on the agenda will be given the opportunity to do so under the heading Customers to be Heard and Recognitions. Each person requesting the opportunity to speak is asked to fill out a request to speak form located in the back of the room, presented to the administrative assistant in attendance at the meeting. Any follow-up or feedback will be done by email on anything that cannot be resolved this evening. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Hendrickson, seconded by McDougall, to approve the meeting's agenda. Paulson.
Aye.
McDougall.
Yes.
Hendrickson.
Yes.
Great. We have an agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by McDougall, seconded by Hendrickson, to approve the consent agenda. Paulson.
Aye.
McDougall.
Yes.
Hendrickson.
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 6, customers to be heard. Anybody call in or write in? No?
Call in tonight.
Recognitions?
Yeah, I can do that right now. Again, a couple recognitions. Eric John, our electric distribution supervisor, and Kurt McLean, our IT administrator, completed the Missouri River Energy Services lead course. It's a leadership training. It's a year-long process, so they go down to Sioux Falls about four times throughout the year. They have homework and preparation that they have to do for each of the trips down there, and they just completed that in October. So I wanted to congratulate them for that. And we are planning to send more staff in 2023.
Moving on to item number 7, old business. Anybody have any old business they'd like to bring up? Seeing none, moving on to item number 8, reports. City Council, Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one thing of note from last night's meeting, we did certify the election results from November 8th, and so council makeup will be basically the same except for a change in Ward 1. Ryan Nelson will fill the seat that Shelley Dahlquist is vacating. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Public Service Commission, anybody have any meetings? Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is maybe semi-related to old business, but it's just something I wanted to bring up to the commission because I kind of saw it circulating around the community in the last week. Some folks posted on social media that, some concerns about their water quality, staining, those sorts of things. And, I kind of immediately identified it as a hardness issue, which we know we have and we've been experiencing since last spring. And incidentally, most of the comments had referred to noticing this since last spring. So I think it's fairly consistent with what we have been experiencing with the hardness in the raw water of the Red River. Anyhow, as I interacted with some of these folks, it became clear that people were looking for more information. And so I thought I'd reach out to General Manager Schmidt and see, maybe there's a flyer or a notice or something that we could do, and maybe just a general update on the situation from Mark Pritchard would be prudent at this point too. And then us commissioners can help be liaisons when we hear people talking about the issue and what it is. And I think ideally, if we can, get maybe some legislators or a push at the state level to get the agencies involved so that we can identify where the hardness is coming from, is really what we're looking for. So I just kind of wanted to update the commission on that and let you guys know. And Travis is already aware, and I just wanted to make it a a public issue here.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Paulson brings up a good point, and I'll have Mark come up and speak to this. Mark and I talked about this today as well too, and felt it would be good to communicate about this tonight, and then maybe look at something else we could do to get more information out to the customer. So Mark, I'll let you. Mark's seen all the comments as well too, and posts, so I'll let him speak to some of that stuff and give a general update and where we're currently at. So go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Supervisor. To Commissioner Paulson's point, we did have the highest total hardness and total non-carbonate hardness that we'd ever seen in the Red River here over the past year or so. It really hammered us in a bad way about last year about this time. It really started in November, and it continued on at about that same rate until June this past summer. And I think part of the taste that people had noticed and some of the hardness residues that people have seen can be due to a couple of factors. First off, whenever there's high hardness in the river water, it means that there's more ions that are suspended or dissolved in solution. So we have to add more chemicals to remove them. Depending on how much there is to take out, that can cause residue issues based off of how much of what chemical we need to use in our softening process. I would like to brag about our operations staff for just a moment. When we did see that hardness peak up at about 1,300 parts per million, average for context is about 350. They were able to keep our finished water total hardness within 5% of what our usual aesthetic quality is. So they did a fantastic job during that situation. But going back to the reason for the taste to be a little bit different is when you have all those dissolved ions in solution and all those minerals in solution, it does have a certain taste profile. So if you have certain types of minerals like iron, you certainly have a taste that's kind of more like a typical country well water taste. It usually has a little bit of iron taste associated with that. And when we had our high hardness excursion, we did blend out some of that water with as much well water as we deemed needed to get the water to be more treatable, because at certain points we were actually outpacing our chemical suppliers' ability to resupply us. So we had some very difficult decisions to make very quickly. And again, I think the operations staff as a whole did a fantastic job keeping up with what that situation was. So as the water quality in the Red River began to go back to what we call normal in June and throughout the summer, we were able to finally begin curtailing some of that blended well water. And when we do that, there's fewer minerals in the water that we treat and send out to the customers, and that does have a taste profile change as well. We went from about a 40% river, 60 well water split to 100% well water over the past 4 months. So that mineral content change, that ion consistently change in the river water, that all has an effect on what the final taste is going to be. And I think that the timeframes that were described in that comment thread that Commissioner Paulson had commented on, I think it lined up very well with when we saw some of those key changes throughout the past 6 months and when we did curtail that well water when we didn't need it anymore for treatment. So now that we are in November 2022, I am happy to report that the river water is back to, quote, normal. Hardness is at about that historic 300 parts per million, and we actually don't need some of our chemicals to be running at all right now. So it's a complete 180 compared to what we saw over the past 8 to 10 months or so. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Mark, that's great. This is great information. Obviously, it's a complex process to keep our drinking water, at the standard that we're all looking for. And so maybe a notification. I don't know. The folks really wanted to understand what was going on. And the reason I commented and got involved in the discussion is because there was a number of people that were worried about the quality of the water. And I think it's our job to assure them that, things are the same, or there's reasons why there's been a taste profile change throughout the seasons because of the different water that we use and what's happening in the basin and those sorts of things. I don't know the best way to do that. I would just hate to have people paying to have their water tested when we know we have, very, very good drinking water here in Moorhead. But those things are noticeable to people, I think. And, I think they always wonder, what's going on? Is it safe? Can I drink it? Those sorts of things. So I don't know the best way to get that information out, but thank you for putting it into very understandable terms. And I think, this is very much an engineering problem, but we need to put it into terms like Mark just did so people can understand what's happening.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then to your point, Commissioner Paulson, in the past when we've had, scheduled changes from 100% river water over to some combination of blended groundwater, in the past, depending on the duration of that circumstance, we did put out a few press releases when it was like a project-specific change that we were doing for a time that we knew it was going to take place. We could certainly look to see what previous reports that we did put out to kind of spread the word to the general populace to make sure that they understood what was changing and that it was in fact a normal process that we have and it's not something to be concerned about. We can definitely look into that.
Well, if we're already doing it, I think we're probably on the ball. And, I'm glad to hear that. And, I'll certainly spread that news. And of course, not everybody sees all the notifications all the time. And most of the comments were referring to previous from now, right? So I would still be concerned, though, or wonder if you're still concerned about what we did experience with the hardness issues in the basin and not understanding or knowing where that might have came from, and if you've received any word from the MPCA or the DNR on some of the requests to look into that issue.
Yeah, excellent question there. Actually, I'm very happy to say that just this afternoon at about 5 after 4, I did receive an email from the MPCA liaisons that we spoke to when we saw this event take place, and they are interested in putting together what looks to be a task force to begin that very process. So the wheels sometimes turn a little bit slower than people would like, but they are definitely looking at where this root cause came from, and then if it is a systemic issue that will be long-term, or if it's something that was a fluke or something else. It really needs to be fleshed out. I do agree with you. And to your text from that comment thread before, it is a basin-wide issue, not only in Minnesota, but in neighboring states as well. Because the watershed that contributes water to where we are here, it actually drains from 3 different states. So it's a very complex issue from a regulatory standpoint because there are very many stakeholders. So it's something that we're definitely trying to raise the red flag on and get things moving, and I think that we're finally at that point. So as we have some updates, we'll certainly provide an update to the Commission when we have good information to report.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Mark, the other question I have, I know it's early or mid-November. Are we anticipating maybe seeing some changes as well too, based on where the water's coming from, based on the time of year?
Good question. Right now, based off of how dry the southern and the western portions of the state of Minnesota have been over the past 5 months or so, there's actually very little, if any, discharge water coming from the Lake Traverse project right now. And all of our surface water is going through the Otter Tail River system and Orwell Dam and contributing to the Red River from the east. And that's typically what we call the good stuff. So when we see that stuff coming through, typically the hardness goes down, total conductivity goes down, and there's more than likely many, many factors why there's an overall water quality increase when we see that take place. And I'm sure that's one of these issues that we'll be talking with the MPCA on a regular basis for.
Yeah, and just another piece too is last week, Mark and Jake and I sat down and we talked with one of the drain tile companies in the area, trying to better understand the impacts of drain tile compared to water quality and things like that. So we got a pretty good understanding from them as well too, and continuing to have those conversations as well. So good information.
And then I have one more related item for the commission to know as well. If we think back to about a year ago when we started talking about the surface water intake protection plan that we're working with MDH, MPCA, the DNR, and other local and regional government bodies, we are in the final stages of completing that document. And once it is finalized to all the stakeholders' satisfaction, we will be bringing that to the commission for formal approval and adoption of that plan. It's taken about 2.5 years to get to where we are, so it's one of those things that took a lot of time, but it will hopefully directly apply to this type of situation where we have the records in place to allow access for grant funding based off this intake protection plan being in place, very similarly to what we do with the wellhead protection plan. So this is all, I guess, a cog in a bigger wheel that will allow us to access funding above and beyond what MPS is able to raise on its own to tackle some of these issues.
Any other Questions for Mark or comments? Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
8C, General Manager's Report. Mr. Schmidt.
Sure. A couple items in the packet tonight. We've got our strategic plan updates for third quarter. I'll let you guys review those if at your leisure. Again, our strategic directions are community, our team, water, electric, finance, and innovation. So we've got updates in there. We've got our key performance indicators as well too, and we continue to add to those as we go through the year. I'm not going to speak too much about it because I'll speak about it more later in another item. Overall, it was been a okay year so far. Reliability has been a lot better than last year, and definitely water quality has been a lot better since June. Other than that, social media has been fairly normal. We've definitely seen our chemical costs go down on the water side. Finance-wise, we're on the electric side a little behind budget based on year to date, but we're still getting into the last piece of the year where it's colder and the utility bills are a little higher on the electric side. On the water side, we're pretty close to budget on that as well too. So again, a lot of good information in there for you to review. So I'll leave it at that. Oh, actually, no, I will not. Got a few more things.
Okay.
Joe had a Missouri River board meeting last week. Missouri River had a bond rating review, and Moody's upgraded them to a AA2, and Fitch reaffirmed their AA- ratings. Again, the increase from Moody's was because they completed the Red Rock Hydro project down in Pella, Iowa. Missouri River members like MPS play a role in the rating agencies, and Mark Moylan and myself had to do a phone call for the rating agencies a while back. Currently, Moorhead Public Services Moody's rating, and we only do Moody's for some reason. Moody's rating is a AA3 for MPS. So, and the last time we did that was 2012. We are going, and we have, again, no Fitch rating. We are going to be going back out to the bond market here because of the DOE substation project in 23. So we might see some changes on that or see what they say with our rating at that point in time. So we were supposed to have a meeting this week with Moody's, or Baker Tilly is who it is now. They had to reschedule just due to weather. So we'll see them in the end of the month here. Other than that, we did have a local Legos team, and we did put that on social media. They came in. Eric, John, and myself entertained some kids for about an hour and a half and answered a bunch of questions that they had. So that was pretty good. We did get a thank you from them. We'll put that in the next agenda. And that's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. I entertain a motion to accept the General Manager's Report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Paulson, seconded by McDougall, to accept the General Manager's Report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Item D, lead and copper results.
Sure. So I'm going to have both Mark Pritchard and Jake Long speak to this. Mark's going to talk about the lead and copper results, and then Jake is going to follow up with an update on the lead service line inventory project. So I'll let those two handle that, and we'll go from there. Go ahead, Mark.
All right, thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Supervisor. As Travis had mentioned, this is kind of a twofold report that we wanted to provide for the commission. The first being that the lead and copper sampling results from June 2022 came back very well this year. Our 90th percentile level, which is basically the threshold from which we are judged, came back at a 5 part per billion lead count. So that is 1/3 of what's called the action level that the state uses as kind of the threshold for extra things needing to be done from a mitigation perspective. So we ended up having a very good result from a lead perspective. For copper, historically we've always had extremely low levels. We came in at 58 parts per billion, and the level is much higher than that. We're about 1/20th of that level. So we did overall very well. And since about 2001, we've done approximately 240 samples. And in each set of 240 samples, one for lead, one for copper, we've only had 3 individual samples that went above what they are able to be from a regulatory perspective. The way that they end up averaging those in, made it such that we stayed in compliance the whole way through. And I'm, again, very happy to report that with our most recent round of samplings in June of this year, we did very well, and we continue to have 100% regulatory compliance with the lead and copper rule. Now, there has been various revisions over time to this lead and copper rule. The newest one is bound to take effect in October of 2024, and that will have some changes for the utility. Jake and I and Travis together have had many, many conversations about how to position the utility to make sure that we are going to remain in full compliance when that transition takes place. Some of the items that we work on a day-to-day level to make sure that we're keeping our metal levels where they need to be is we do run a higher pH for the finished water. Depending on what part of the country you look in, sometimes pH is as low as a 7 or a 7.5 pH. We actually run quite a bit higher than that. We're at about a 9.3 coming out of the facility. And what that does is instead of allowing for the water to become more corrosive as it goes through the distribution system, it actually forms a light scaling compound. And we do that for a couple different reasons, mainly so that the cast iron that we have in the distribution system, it ends up forming a physical barrier on the interior wall of that pipe. So that way there's a physical distancing of the water in the pipe versus the actual material on the inner wall of the pipe. So that's how we stop some of that corrosion from taking place. It's not 100% effective, but it does a very good job in delaying those pipes' degradation over time. So with those couple of day-to-day items that we do for every gallon of water we treat, again, it does position MPS to be in a pretty good position for continued compliance even as this rule changes to its new version in 2024. So the reason why lead is so important to take out of the distribution systems is it is a known neurotoxin at certain levels. So the goal for every distribution system in the country is to have zero lead. And that is really evident that that's been a big push at the federal level ever since Flint, Michigan had the situation that continues to kind of plague that area up there. There's lots of lead up there that still continues to cause problems. So the regulators at the EPA, they decided that with this rule change, that we're going to get aggressive as a nation to remove lead from the distribution system. And that's where our inventory project that Jake and his crew have been working extremely hard on come into play. So with that, I will turn things over to Jake Long, our distribution supervisor, so he can provide an update on how the inventory project is going and how it ties into these samples.
Thank you, Mark. Jake Long, Water Distribution Supervisor. As Mark mentioned, I just want to give an update on our lead service line inventory project. As he mentioned, the EPA and MDH have revised the lead and copper rule, and with that, they're mandating each public water system to complete an inventory project on all the service lines within their community system. So with that, in October 2024, we will be required to send that. And the main purpose of the service line inventory project is just to accurately determine the location and the total number of lead service lines within the system. And also another big part of it is to provide customers with information on how to reduce lead in drinking water. Another key component is just to be able to properly and accurately budget and plan for the replacement when that time comes and how that'll be funded. So just going to give a little overview on our project again. It's been a while since we've talked about this. Back in early of last year, we kicked off the project, and our GIS department has been, we've utilized our GIS to document all this information, and many staff members, we've reviewed past documents on service cards and old or past MPS rules and regulations, also past plans and specifications for subdivisions to start identifying and inventorying the ones that we know, because that's one thing that you can do is look at those past records to inventory it. So once we got that portion done, there was a lot of reviewing, lots of documents. We then said, all right, what's the next step? We used that to create different phases throughout the project, and that got us into our field verification. So we began for the phases. We would begin with notifying customers that MPS staff would be coming door to door, and then within the next couple of weeks, we would do those field verifications, and we also would provide a letter on how to reduce lead in drinking water to those customers so they had it in hand, because that's one of the important parts of this revision. Currently, right now, we're on phases 1 through 3. That's basically from Main Avenue to 16th Avenue, south in Moorhead, and everything from 20th Street to all the way to the river. And currently, within the project, we've identified over 180 lead service lines. Overall, results are better than expected, but within those phases, we're only about 60% complete. So the challenge has been, once that initial kickoff of door-to-door verifications, we've had, we then need customer participation on getting back to us with our survey or setting up an appointment to, for our field staff to come back and verify it. So that's been a challenge. We've utilized several different tactics to notify and remind customers. We've sent out a couple different reminder postcards, as well as used the automated phone system we have on just trying to urge people to get back to us so we can complete this project. So like I said, overall within the project, or the phases 1 through 3, we're about 60% complete, so we got a little ways to go. But luckily, what a lot of utilities have been able to take advantage is when they converge their AMI conversion, they're able to also grab the inventory at the same time. So, you know, we're in the process of our AMI project, so the hope is we'll be able to wrap these up within the next couple of years of when that AMI project is going on. So overall, it's been going, but they're going fairly well, but there has been challenges just on being able to get inside, since we have to get inside homes to verify that the service line. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
I think, Jake, I must have, or maybe I missed it while I was reading something. Did we talk about phases 4 and 5?
Oh, yeah, 4 and 5 we plan on starting at the end of this year, going into next year. So that'll be more North Moorhead from Main Avenue to about 10th Avenue and 17th Street back to the river. That'll be that main focus on 4 and 5.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Paulson, go ahead.
Jake, I'm just curious, you know, for the service line ownership, there's going to be homeowner ownership in this as well. You know, with the rule change, is there also federal or state funding available for service line replacement? And, you know, what might we look at as far as a partnership with the homeowner in trying to get all that lead out of the ground instead of just up to the curb stop, basically? So.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and that's a very hot topic on what we're the drinking water revolving fund. That is, we sent applications out for that, and that's kind of one of the main parts they're trying to figure out, is the ownership and what we can fund as a public project and when it comes to private and public. So it'll be interesting. That's kind of one of the main things they're working on is, but we have sent out 4 different drinking water revolving fund applications. We set up about 4 different projects that we've already kind of identified, because we want to position ourselves very well. So if there is funding available, we're on a list, and they've came out with a preliminary list, and we are on that for all of our projects as well. Actually, we submitted 5. We also submitted about 30 lines that don't include water main replacement. So the majority of the lead service lines also include replacing the water main. So they, within those applications and what we have discussed with MDH, they want to incorporate the water main as well, since you're already going to be in the street, which makes sense, of course. So we have 5 out there. We're on the list, but there's still a lot of legislation going on how they're going to kind of divvy out that funding.
Sure. Thanks.
Any other questions for Jake or Mark?
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr.
Jake, I know we've got till September of 2024 to complete the inventory project. What happens if we don't get 100% information from all the customers? Is there a concern with that? Do we have issues? I mean, just trying to make sure we're on top of it and that we don't have a concern on the back end of that as well, too.
Yep, so what we know now is any service line that's not identified, or unknown equals lead. So it'll equal lead until you have proven otherwise. So there is a concern. Thankfully, we do have the AMI project, and I think we're going to be able to inventory those as that goes on, and it'll be close within October 2024. The other part of it, it doesn't affect us until we go out of compliance within the lead and copper testing. So as long as we stay within where we need to be with the new rule revisions, we'll be okay. But where you'd get in trouble would be if you go out of compliance, it's based off, you'll have to work with MDH on a plan, and it'll be a certain percentage that you have to replace. So if you have a bunch of unknowns that would equal lead, you'd have that many more to replace, within that year, or whatever you came up with the plan with the Minnesota Department of Health.
Go ahead.
We've talked with city staff on this, and, again, a lot of things are still up in the air on whether or not how we're going to fund this and the public-private piece of it. We've got plans for that depending upon how the state rules everything, if we have to handle it or not. We've got ideas, but I think that will come more into play once we get more understanding of what the state is going to be for a requirement on that. So have you heard anything more on that besides that it's still trying to understand that separation point?
Yeah, the tricky part for utilities is they want a full completion. They don't want a half replacement. So it makes it tricky, especially with public projects going onto private property, and how you're also not just going to the outside, you actually have to be inside the home too. You got to have a plumber to be able to do the plumbing work. You have to be down in the basement. What we've noticed throughout this project is some of these older homes, which are going to be the lead ones, they're in tricky parts of the home as well, down in the basements. They're not just in open space. They might be in a closet or in a bathroom. So it'll be tricky on how you go about in replacing that. And I think the last update I heard is they're going to talk about this next bill in January. So hopefully we'll know more then.
Assume at that point in time we'll be bringing stuff back on how to handle these situations. So, perfect. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to accept Jake and Mark's report on lead and copper.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Paulson, seconded by McDougall, to accept the report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item number 12, policy on mission statement, core values, and strategic direction. Mr. Schmidt.
Sure, I will handle this. Marcy Douglas was not available, and she was not available for the next meeting, so I get to try to put everything into words that she would state. Again, last year, 2022, we approved a 3-year strategic plan with our mission, core values, and strategic directions included in that. We did update our policy, and as part of the bylaws, we have to review that. So staff did go through that as part of our strategic plan meetings that we had in October. We didn't see anything that we needed to adjust from there, so there's no recommended changes on the policy, but just wanted you guys to be aware of that. That is part of the bylaws. We need to review that and handle it on an annual basis. So other than that, again, in front of you, you've got, or in your packet, you've got the strategic plan summary, which includes our mission statement, core values, strategic directions, and key performance indicators. Again, on October 4th and 5th, we had several meetings. We had a meeting with professional and supervisory staff to kick it off. That was a longer than average meeting, about 4 or 5 hours for that one. Kind of went through everything, looked at everything on a high-level perspective. Then we took that down, and on an hour and a half, over an hour and a half period, we sat down with all the staff, or the staff that was available, and worked through those as well too, to see if there was any changes they recommended, thought, needed, things like that. So we did 3 of those meetings over the 4th and 5th, and then we closed it out with a recap meeting on the 5th with professional and supervisory staff. The participants that were at those meetings are included in the packet. Again, it includes your mission, core values. Really what we're looking at tonight is approving the 2023 strategic directions. And so just looking at the 2022, if you look at your community, our team, and water matrix page, there are items in red within the first year accomplishments. Those items are going to be moved to 2023 just due to timing, other plans, things like that, that we're still working on, or being tweaked a little bit based on what's included in it. And then if you go to 2023's matrix for those same 3 strategic directions, you've got some green in your realities and successes. Those are all new things that are added, and same with the second year accomplishments and the KPIs. So anything in green is added for 2023. If it's still in dark, it's been kept the same from 2022. Same thing for when you get into the electric finance and innovation piece. Minor changes there as well too. On 2022's, we did add one thing into finance, successful audit on sales tax. That was one thing that came up last year that we weren't aware of, and it was a long time since our last one. So we added that one in there as an accomplishment as well too for finance. And then if you look at the 2023 matrix, anything that was in green is added, and anything that's in black stays the same as well too. So overall, some adjustments from staff and professional and supervisory were all incorporated into the next year's matrix, or 2023's matrix. We did then also spend most of the time, we did spend it on 2 items. We talked in depth about community engagement, culture award events, and employee appreciation. And there was a laundry list of things that were included in that. That's also included in your packet as well. Again, we need to look through those and see what things we can do, can't do, and work through some of those. Some of those things we're actually already doing as well too, but they were included just because it's something we do as community engagement and or as culture awards or employee appreciation and events. So again, I'm recommending approval on this. Any questions? I'll let you guys go at it.
Thinking of one. I guess how do you feel that we can grow this community engagement?
It's a good question. I think a lot of it comes down to how we handle those situations. If it's more of a public event instead of like we're going to be doing the Holiday Lights Parade. We'll have a float in that. That's something we can do. It's just trying to figure out how you set those things up so that they can do it. In the past we've done Public Power Week where it was more private. I think if we open it up to more of the public, it's something we could do more of. And a lot of this also comes into talking with some of the other utilities in the area and how they handle certain items as well too. Can they handle it from a marketing event, or more of it's open to anybody from the public than just more of a private or internal event and things like that. So I think that's really how you be able to do more or community engagement piece of that.
Well, we had talked about in terms of the org structure, somebody that could maybe handle some of this? Is that a possibility of
Correct,
making,
yep, yeah.
utilizing that person?
The communications and marketing person would be a key person or position to handle some of this or help us be more engaged in some of those needs.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Hendrickson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When was the mission statement first established?
That was a good question. Probably in that 2011 timeframe, just based on the policy, that's when the policy was adopted. I'd have to get back to you on a definitive answer to that, but I'd say somewhere in that early 2010 range.
And, the next question, so when we start the strategic directions to, strategic,
Planning?
yeah.
What was that?
When was that established? About the same time?
The strategic plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe before that even. Again, it was very comprehensive. It had a lot of items in it, and last year we really kind of slimmed it down to looking at 1 year by 1 year, trying to actually focus on getting things done over having this big list of things. And a lot of it's kind of incorporated into this. It's just, we're not doing specific, if it's something that never gets touched, why put it in a strategic direction? So the way we adjusted it was so that we could focus on certain things and get things accomplished and then move on to the next thing over, maybe we handle it in 5 years.
And that's what I was going to say too, Travis. I remember when it was huge.
Yeah.
And I think you did a really good job of just narrowing it down. I remember reading that, and I fell asleep a couple times reading that thing the first time. So that's what I wanted to comment on. It's a good job. So
It's. I know we've had it for. I've been here 15 years, so it's been probably that long.
it's been before me, and that's a long time ago. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, I entertain a motion to approve the policy.
So moved.
Again?
I have a motion by Hendrickson, seconded by Paulson to approve the policy and the strategic direction matrix. Paulson?
Aye.
Hendrickson?
Yes.
McDougal?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. No closed session tonight. Next meeting, December 6th if needed, and December 20th. Same thing.
Yeah, at this time, not planning on the 6th unless something comes up we need to put on there. So be a little bit heavier on the 20th.
Yeah, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great, thank you.